Good afternoon, good morning, hello everyone, and welcome to the HDI Webcast Theater. If this is your first visit, don't be shy. Go over to Help in the top menu bar and look at the attendee guide. It'll show you some of the great features that we have, including group chat, the social suite, and some of the other features that you won't find in other environments. So welcome. Today I'll be in dual roles, both as your host and as a presenter. It's always a privilege to be here in the Webcast Theater with a great audience like you. Let's go over a few housekeeping items before we get started with the content. First of all, don't forget that you can chat with the other attendees in the group chat, but you can also check out the conversations on HDI Connect, where we have blog posts and discussion boards for you. Ask your network. If you have a question that you want to share with your peers, please check it out. And we also have LinkedIn groups, including the HDI Professional Association for the Technical Support Professional. That is a mouthful, and I got through it without flinching. And the HDI Desktop Support Professional Discussion Forum. Those are the two biggest groups. If you have a specialty like problem management, we also have a problem management group for problem managers, so check those groups out on LinkedIn. And you can also follow the hashtag on Twitter, and it's ThinkHDI. And the reason it's ThinkHDI is because HDI is all kinds of full of crosstalk about high-powered diesels and the Human Development Index and Home Depot interiors and lots of other things that use HDI as their hashtag. So ThinkHDI is the right hashtag for us. And there's usually some great discussion and announcements and so forth. So check that out. And then we have some details about the environment itself here. If you need help, that's where it's located, right in the top menu bar. You'll see a help located up there. You'll be popped into a chat with the folks that are behind the scenes here for an expo, giving user assistance if you have trouble hearing, seeing, whatever. So check it out. And then if you have a question for the presenters, and it'll be Jeff Maloney and myself, if you need to ask us a question or would like to find out more about something that we mentioned, please populate that Ask a Question bar at the bottom of your screen and click Submit so that we get to some questions at the end. We should have ample time. The key discussion points that I'll be talking about today is that support is evolving or being reinvented. Business needs are changing. And I'm going to talk about some emerging models for support that are coming out of these changes, and then some considerations for the various models to help you navigate. And help is spelled with a K these days. Sorry about that. And then we have a resource center, and if you look in the top nav in the attendee area, you will see resources. If you click on that, you'll see HDI resources. You will also see BMC resources. There's a dedicated folder. And BMC has sent us over some content today. It's gracious of them and kind to host and sponsor our webinar. So make sure that you download some of those items from the BMC folder. Check them out and read them. That's a little bit about me. Most of you already know me, so I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to talk about Jeff Maloney, who's here from BMC, and he's going to tell us a little bit about some of the things that BMC is doing these days that kind of coincide with some of the things I'm going to talk about. Jeff and I compared notes before the presentation today, and we have a lot of common themes. So Jeff is the BMC Solutions Marketing Manager, and he's going to talk about some of those BMC solutions. So Jeff, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Roy, and welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. We really appreciate the chance to host and sponsor this wonderful conversation on evolving support models. And I just have about 5 or 6 minutes of slides here that really coincide with Roy's great topic here. And it's all about sort of the evolution of support models that we see today, and there's kind of one big driver that we see from a BMC perspective, from a vendor perspective, as what's driving some of these evolving support model changes, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But I need to do the obligatory BMC software. I'm sure most people on the phone know us for IT service management solutions, but we also do everything from mainframe into the mobile environment. We've been in business about 3 decades, and around 24 of those years we've actually been in working on IT service management products. We have a suite of service management products that match size of companies and maturity models that we have all around the industry that we need to support. So our sort of stance here on IT service management is really not one, we don't want one solution. Our customers want choices in terms of size of corporations, maturity, where they are in the world, and so that's sort of our stance is we want to provide service management solutions for the different corporations that come knocking on our door and need us to manage their service desks. But as a lot of people know as well, it's not just necessarily service management. We have a lot of integrations into our greater ITOM or IT operations management strategy, things like performance and availability monitoring, events management, automation, and all of those components sort of around the help desk can really drive a more effective help desk either through information or through automation of tasks that will help us solve particular issues that are coming our way. But to really focus on the topic today about evolving support models, a big driver for these evolving support models are these wonderful group of young-looking individuals on the screen, which we term the millennials, right? And these millennials these days have different expectations than what we've seen in different generations that service management is supporting, right? They want to work with technologies that are consistent with what they're doing at home and what they're doing on the weekend. They want to use any device. They want to make sure it's collaborative, just like their Facebooks and just like their Instagrams and their Yelps. They want to make sure that it's simple, that they can do things themselves. They want a rapid response rate because that's what they're used to getting in their personal lives, and then they really want a great experience throughout. And a lot of these sort of expectations are coming from the two wonderful providers of these solutions. Apple, simple, intuitive. I have a home button, and then I use my finger to swipe. And then Google. I type in some magical words, and up pops 28,000 million gazillion articles on whatever I'm trying to solve, right? So thanks to the consumer market, the expectations of the business individuals that we're supporting today and even more so moving forward as the millennials start going into the workforce and the older generation starts retired, is putting a lot of pressure on service desk to improve our relationships with the business, to improve the service delivery model, and as Roy's pointing out, sort of these evolving support needs. Unfortunately, in the sort of IT service management help desk service desk model, we have this, I don't want to say antiquated, I just want to say a different way of presenting data to end users that's different than what they're seeing in their weekend and at-home environment. So a lot of the times we'll present to our customers, our end users, our business employees, applications that they don't just understand. We know it really well in IT, but they not necessarily understand what we're trying to present to them in a web portal or a self-service form. So this causes friction between IT and the business, and this causes dissatisfaction in the business and low perception rates of IT. So what we're trying to do at BMC is we want to help you overcome that friction, improve the business satisfaction, but we realize that we still need to automate IT, so we sort of deem it in two different worlds, provide an amazing user experience, a mobile user experience, a self-service experience, an experience that they're used to using in their consumer world, but also we need a streamlined service delivery. Let's not kid ourselves, right? We still need to automate IT. We need to get information to the service desk. We need to manage all the tasks so that we can improve service delivery effects and make the business more productive. So if we kind of break it out into two different parts, the first thing we really focus on is amazing user experience. And we have solutions that are very mobile. We have one in My IT that allows the business users, our customers, our employees, to take sort of everything with them that they need from an IT perspective. It's very mobile, like Twitter. It's easy to use, like Amazon. It's very social, like Facebook. And it's very information friendly or cognizant, like Google. So we take these kind of concepts that we see from a consumer environment, but we mold it into a solution that you as IT providers can provide your business users, and we call that My IT. And the reason we're doing that is because if you look at this slide here, the millennials come into the office, and this is frequently what it looks like, right? I got a stack of papers, I got this hard phone, I got these sticky notes, and I've got 10 applications that I'm trying to manage on my day, when that's drastically different than what I'm doing at home in my engagement models that I have from at home technologies, and whether we like it or not, that consumerization is causing an effect on the businesses that we need to support, and we should be able to adapt into that somewhat consumer-style model, but make sure that we're putting the security and compliance and governance around it from an IT perspective. So what we do with our MyIT solution is we provide modern self-service. I don't want to say next-gen self-service, but it's more of a modern self-service, that we take these concepts that you're used to using in Facebook, in Google, in Apple, in Twitter, and we mold them into what we would provide for IT services. So we have virtual agents, for example. We have an app store where the employees of your company can go into a simple user face, see the applications that they should get for their particular line of business and download them right away, and then if they need something sort of outside the world, they can request it, and they have the approval process to request it. But the beauty from an IT perspective is it manages all those licenses, and it gets rid of the Excel spreadsheets and Lotus Notes databases and these other databases that we're using to manage our software or hardware assets. It's formless, meaning the users can go in there just like you're going to do your 140 characters, a little bit more than that, or it is more than that, and you type in a few keywords and we present them the information, just like Google, that will help them solve their issue, but when they really need to send in an issue or submit a request, they can all do that from just one basic text box, and then all that information gets transitioned in the back end. And it's very social. So we, just like you would have in Facebook, you can follow your friends and you can have groups, we have that concept within our MyIT solution, and the beauty of that is it's a self-help mechanism, it's a crowdsourcing type mechanism, which is just pure call deflection on the back end. That's a little bit about the amazing user experience that we provide in our MyIT solution. And we're also providing those same kind of concepts for a remedy suite as well. Over the next couple of months, you're going to see a lot of great, cool new features for the IT teams themselves that mimic what I just showed you from the MyIT perspective. But again, like I said, we could have the world's best self-service application. It's mobile, it's easy to use, but really the power is driven from the back end on the service delivery process. So from an IT automation, we need automation to drop the cost, the efficiency. We need to provide better business productivity with the services we deliver. That's going to give you a bigger competitive and a better customer satisfaction rate. It can all be driven from IT because IT is really the backbone of the businesses today, and we need IT automation, service delivery processes, the analysis, the extension of the business, be able to configure the system so that you can support the business as you see fit. Right? And what we see an issue today in the service management model is everything's sort of bespoke. It's not necessarily integrated. We're not integrating to automation. We're not integrating to monitoring tools. We're not integrating to our asset management tools. We're not integrating those third-party databases. We're not integrating to a big database so that we can do analysis. We're not integrating to our mobile environment. We're not integrating to our social environment. So what we're trying to do is our stance is we want to integrate all these other components that are around the service desk. It's not just instant problem change release. There's a lot of other components around the service desk that can improve service desk productivity. Things like discovery and asset management, patch management, deployment, events and monitoring, even integration into your third-party systems, things like SCCM or Delcase if you're using third-party type software. We want to integrate all those solutions and really have service management as the hub, so that when information and tasks and requests and issues come in, we can automate that, provide all the information, and then the service desk teams can handle that as they see fit in a more productive manner than what we've done in the past. So just like automation, or excuse me, just like integration, sort of that central platform, automation and processes is key as well. That's why we and a lot of other vendors, we provide IT automation out of the box. But probably more importantly is we give you the process designers or the tools to configure your own automation, because not everybody's following a particular standard all the time. So we feel it's very important, like that, with that platform, just like I can do integrations, is to also provide configurations and automation, and then also centralize that information from discovery and asset management into a centralized database so that we can support the needs of the modern business today. So that was just a really quick synopsis of a few things that we focus on that amazing user experience from a front-end perspective, meaning what the business users would have, but also some of the concepts that we leverage to build ITSM, automation, integration, the power of knowledge. With those two together, we're going to really be able to support the evolving support models that Roy is going to talk about here right now. So Roy, why don't I transition back to you and let's see a great presentation on evolving support models.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and that was a terrific overview of some of the products that BMC has and the issues that you're trying to address, which is terrific. You're obviously paying attention. And I just mentioned that, don't miss the point that coming up in October, BMC is having its user conference in Orlando. It's called Engage. Check it out. It's right in the middle of October. Does not conflict with HDI and IPSMS Fusion event, so check it out. Thanks very much for that. So I'm going to take this kind of in pieces, but the two big chunks that I'm going to talk about today are the what, in other words, what's going on out there, and the why. Why is this happening? Why now? Why does there seem to be a tremendous impetus to change within the organizations, especially support? The business organizations are changing, IT is changing, support is going to change too. So it's evolving, which means making incremental changes. Things are being added or subtracted. We're not doing things the way we used to, making changes a bit at a time, kind of, Kaizen style. And then there are other organizations that are completely reinventing the way support is done, and that's disruptive change. We're going to talk about both of those. From the evolving standpoint, one of the things that we know is going on, and there's a lot of talk about it, is to continue to shift left. And I'll explain what that means in just a second, because not everybody thinks of it the same way. So I'm going to explain the best definition that I've seen anyway. There's increased self-service, and Jeff was just talking about some of that with products like MyIT, and increased automation. Again, being able to go out and do asset discovery, that kind of thing that helps us manage the user environment a little bit better. So those are three ways in which support is evolving. Well, let's look at shift left a little bit. And there's a great definition from Pete McGarrahan. It focuses on moving issue resolution to the lowest cost and closest to the customer. And that really is your front line. That's your level 1 and level 0. And basically what happens within shift left is that your more complicated technical issues that have historically been handled by Tier 2 and Tier 3 or other escalation groups within your organization get pushed down closer to the front line, maybe all the way to level 1 and then maybe out to level 0. So what's the point of that? Well, if you're doing the same thing over and over again in level 1, you're answering the same questions, you're doing the same procedures to fix the same issues over and over and over again, then there's probably no reason why you can't move a lot of that out into self-service, which is level 0. That's going to open up availability for your frontline analysts and agents to be able to take on different types of work. And the types of work that they can take on, being thinking beings, one would hope, is that they can learn more about the technical issues that your higher tiers have been resolving and resolve those at the front line, close to the customer, more quickly, because one of the things that we know about end users and customers is they want the resolution quickly and efficiently. It's got to be done right, and it's got to be done quickly in order to provide the best solution. So getting those solutions down in the front line, close to the customer, also lowers the cost for the entire organization, because in general, your frontline folks are a little bit less expensive than your engineers and database administrators and those higher level folks that really have been resolving these issues. Now, here's the key. In order to do that, you need some information, and that can be where your organization really has to drive this kind of change. You really need to be able to get the knowledge that you need in order to resolve these issues at the front line, because we're not all database administrators. We don't know everything there is to know about, SQL or Oracle or any of the other database models that are out there. So we need the knowledge to be able to get the right stuff done as close to the customer as possible. So then there's the reinventing and making disruptive changes. And it's examining how and where support is delivered. Does it have to be a centralized help desk or service desk? What do the customer really needs? How do they want their support delivered? Is it efficient for somebody who's in an office in New York to call somebody in Washington, D.C. to explain an issue to them when there's an IT person in the New York office sitting 20 feet away? So, there's a lot of reexamination going on about the way that our services are being delivered. And a lot of that has to do with better customer experiences. As you can see there in the little picture that I attached, we can't is being transformed into we can. Their businesses are willing now to take some chances, do a little bit of experimenting, and look at different ways to deliver support that we might not have thought about in the past. So some organizations are moving support out into the business units. And basically what that means is taking some of your support folks who are trained and actually report within the service support center organization and moving them out, embedding them in business units. And we'll talk about that word embedding a little bit more at length. Some organizations are broadening the purview of the service desk and service management, and we've just done some research about that. We're kind of excited about the responses that we've got on that, using IT service management principles in different parts of the organization. So the purview of support might be expanding out into different units because we might be using the same tools and processes and procedures to support HR facilities and different aspects of the organization more than we have been in the past. And then there's also the whole idea of remote and virtual analysts, people working from home. That's one sort of trend. It hasn't really taken off yet, but I think it will in the next couple of years, being able to ad hoc add people to the service desk if there's a high demand suddenly, being able to reach out to people that might be on call, waiting in different parts of the country, waiting at home. However we work that, remote and virtual analysts will be able to assist. So the location of support might not be traditional, and the purview, the wheelhouse of support might be expanding. And it's some pretty clear evidence that, in fact, it is. So support is not taken for granted. And by that I mean that if I were to do a startup right now, and I got up to a point where I had 35 or 40 or 50 employees, I might not necessarily take it completely for granted that I'd absolutely positively had a help desk. And I would want to be able to justify that support center. And so in order not to be taken for granted and to show value to the organization, you have to be available and responsive, and you have to be able to continually absorb more and different work. And goodness knows we've been doing a lot of that over the past couple of years, especially in the support industry, more and different types of work. And I'll talk specifically about a couple of things. And also the support has to be available through multiple channels, whether you call it multi-channel, omni-channel, whatever buzzword you pick. You have to be available through a lot of different channels. And I'm going to show you some early responses from our 2014 Support Center Practices and Salary Report that show you how the channel world is really changing. It's pretty surprising. Now, it's interesting that Jeff and I both chose this graphic. And it's just a wonderful thing, just to show the contrast between, internally developed applications that traditionally have wanted every piece of information they could possibly get to authenticate the fact that you're a user, et cetera, whereas the Apple and Google stuff is really, really easy. And here's the key. People are used to that Amazon, Google, Apple way of doing things. They expect now that doing business with support, doing business with IT in general, is going to be as easy as it is doing business with all of those consumer companies that are out there doing things in a simple and straightforward fashion. So keeping it simple is a really good thing to do. So here's what's going on. Changing business needs and priorities. I'll just mention those a little bit. Increasing mobility. Jeff talked about that, the desire for mobility, and I'll mention a stat or two from our research on mobility. And everybody, you know, you're carrying a smartphone right now. You might carry a tablet as well. People are carrying multiple devices. They're on the go. They want to be able to connect from anywhere, you know, Starbucks or another coffee shop or from home or from any. They want to be able to at least get their email and calendar. They want to be able to do things on the go. Changing technologies. BYOD has introduced lots of other things into the environment. More folks using things like Macs now in the business environment, and that wasn't too common, depending on what business you were in, of course, in past years. But there's a bigger mix of technologies, and those technologies are evolving more rapidly. And as I mentioned, you know, contact channels, as we'll see a few slides down, are changing, increasing. And then changing demands, business and personal, you know, work-life balance. We're all working long days and hard days, and we're very busy, and there's so many things going on. We have to be able to answer questions. We have to be able to get to meetings. We have to be on conference calls. At the same time, in our personal lives, you know, many of us would like to be at the soccer game or the baseball game or at the school play or somewhere else. And so those demands are conflicting a lot of times. But if there's a way for us, if the technology exists for us to be able to do both of those things, be on the conference call while we're at the school play, or, you know, hopefully you're paying attention to one or the other, but you know, you get my drift. You can be in multiple places at the same time, as it were, because of the technology. And then also changing workforce. You know, boomers are retiring, and millennials are increasingly coming into the workforce. They have different ways of doing things, and that's fine. Different generations have always had different ways of doing things. We just need to be able to enable them to do things in the way that they need to do them in order to get their jobs done. So I mentioned changing priorities in the business, and this is a slide I use fairly often. This is from our 2013 Support Center Practices and Salary Reports, and it talks about the top spending priorities. You know the expression, put your money where your mouth is. Well, this is where organizations are putting their money in terms of the Support Center. And you can see that there have been some changes over the last couple of years. And we talked a little bit earlier about customer experience. And improving customer service is number 2, right behind supporting business growth and spending priorities, as opposed to where it was a couple of years ago. Now, reducing costs has dropped from number 2 last year, or 2 years ago, to number 5. So reducing costs is less of an issue. Improving customer service is more of an issue. So organizations are willing to spend money if it is going to make people more efficient, if it's going to provide them with better service, if it's going to keep them working better. Okay? And somewhere there's a slide. There we go. So here's some stats on mobility. And we looked at mobility pretty hard over a series of research studies that we did at HDI. And you can see that it took a while for organizations to really get a handle on what was going on with mobile devices, and then suddenly decided it wasn't really about the device so much as it was about the connectivity and the data, and that's when things started to change. And as soon as organizations really started to get some solid policies around who could use these devices, who owned them, where the data had to reside, how to protect it, how to back it up, all those things, when that started to get into place, then things started to change. And you can see in our last study here in 2013, toward the end of the year, more organizations are at least being able to keep up now. But also be aware that 15% of tickets are generated through mobile device support. That's a big chunk, as you can imagine. Now, usually when I say that, 15%, I say it in conjunction with the fact that we already know that about 30 to 35% of tickets on average have to do with password resets. So probably some of these mobile device tickets have to do with password reset. But let's take it as an aggregate and figure that 45% or maybe even 50% of tickets are being generated from those two sources. One, password reset. 2, mobile device support or support of mobility in any case. So It's a huge chunk of support. We really need to be aware of it. The contact channels are definitely changing. Predominantly in past years, it's been phone. And a lot of the metrics that we've been measuring and a lot of the techniques that we've been talking about have to do with the telephone. And then email. And email came in as a support tool and started to complicate matters, because it's one thing to be able to measure average handle time when you're on the phone. You talk on the phone, you're done with the call, you hang up. Okay, well, there's a record of that. But how do you measure that in terms of email? Things get more complicated. Then the demand for self-service. As Jeff mentioned again, self-service is a happening thing, as it were, and the demand for it is increasing, and the sensibility behind it is increasing, as I talked about with shift left. Moving the simple, repetitive calls out to self-service really makes a lot of sense. Why should you spend $17 or $18 or $20 a call, depending on what your average call per ticket is, to answer the same question that you answered 4 times yesterday, when the proper documentation could be in a self-service system as long as customers can find it? And that's a big as long as. They have to be able to find what they're looking for in their own words in order to be able to use self-service efficiently. And a lot of that will take some of the cost burden off support if people can find their own solutions. And also, we find that some generational preferences are that I'd rather take care of myself than have somebody take care of me. And so the changing workforce influences the demand for self-service as well. And I've been thinking over the past couple of years that chat, web forms, or web requests, social tools, and SMS texting is going to grow in terms of support channel, and we'll see where that is right now in a couple of minutes. You all know the saying about real estate: location, location, location. Well, support, it's availability, availability, availability. And why is that? It's because with employees now in organizations, it's availability, availability, availability. As I was talking about earlier, you've got to be on the conference call at maybe 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning because the other people are in a totally different time zone, different part of the world, whatever it happens to be. Employees need to be available. If something's not working right, guess what? Support has to be available too, one way or another, whether it's self-service or whether it's assisted service with live people answering phones or answering email or answering chat. Whatever it happens to be, it has to be available, it has to be fast, and it has to be efficient. If it's not all of those things, then it may be holding back business growth. And remember what that number one priority was in terms of spending at the top of that little table was supporting business growth. So availability is incredibly important in terms of the priorities of modern support. So here's one of the changes that's taking place too, and it has to do with the physical location of the help desk or service desk. And we already talked about shift left, pushing stuff down from level 2, level 1 out to level 0. But there's also physical proximity and integration with the network operations center, with system administration, with application development. And there's a lot of support centers that are really starting to look more like that picture, where you have a network operations center and a service desk side by side, and system administration not far away either. So that instead of trying to chase after an administrator, either over network or systems or whatever it happens to be that might be causing a problem for end users, they're at the next seat or at the next desk or across the room from you, and you can compare notes and probably get things done more efficiently. There's a great metric that my friend Carlos Casanova often mentions called mean time to find someone. And if you've ever been trying to chase down somebody who's involved in a lot of meetings, it can be very difficult to do that. So keep your mean time to find someone down and put people in one room. That's a trend that we're starting to see more often. Now, I'm going to talk about embedded support a little bit, and this is something that's been increasing over the last couple of years. So individuals who report to support, they're basically, support center analysts, get moved out into business units and live out there, work out there alongside the folks in the business units that they support. What's the advantage? Well, they get to know about the applications that people are using. They get to see the peaks and valleys of those people's days. And they get to a much better sense of what it's like to be that customer. And, again, they're available. Somebody can turn around in their chair and get an answer, get a ticket open, get something escalated, whatever it happens to be, because that support person is sitting 2 chairs away. So local solutions, rapid solutions. Now, those people are using the service desk tool set, and that's important, and I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. And they also contribute to knowledge, and that includes the knowledge base that's being used at the service desk, but it also includes business intelligence. And business intelligence is getting right information to the right people at the right time. And so if you're out there and you have a technical savvy, which you probably do if you're a service desk analyst, you see something that's happening maybe once, maybe twice, that's affecting the end users, you can report that more back to the organization. You can suggest, perhaps, better ways that the people in the business unit in which you're embedded could do things using the technical tools that you're aware of. So you can be a business intelligence point of gathering information, and that's important too, because ultimately it's about the business. It's not about IT. It's not about the support center. It's about moving business forward. So distributed support, this is kind of similar. It involves people who are doing kind of technical assistance jobs, but they may not report to the support center like the embedded people do. And I've talked to several organizations that have this kind of a model, and this is a tough one. And it's tougher simply because those people don't report to the support center directly, and they may not use the common set of tools, and that is a problem. And it's a problem because, let's say I'm an end user and I report to the person, I report an issue to the person that I'm supposed to report the issue to, who's one of these folks who's out distributed in the business. And they put it in their ticketing system, and they get real busy and they kind of forget about it. Well, I'm still here waiting for my solution. And eventually I get a little frustrated because I'm not hearing back. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to call the support center to try to get an update. Support center doesn't even see that ticket. That can be a problem. So whether or not they're using a common tool set is really important. And whether or not they report to the support center can be important in terms of management. If, occasionally you'll run into the office politics where, my baseball team can beat up your baseball team, and one group might not be as responsive as we would like to another group. So beware that if you have this distributed model where people do not directly report to the support center and may or may not use common tools, those are some things you need to watch out for. Try to get people on the common tools, make the argument that they really need to have a central point of contact, at least technologically, so that those tickets go to the same bucket, and that they need to be responsive. Like an escalation group. We've all had issues with escalation groups. We try to bump a ticket up, and maybe or maybe not, it gets a response. Now, here's some interesting stuff. Channels of support. Woohoo, has this changed this year? Now, let me explain a little bit about that. As you will see when our Support Center Practices and Salary Report comes out, probably the end of September, beginning of October, you'll see that our demographics changed substantially this year. We're not 100% sure why, but different people, at least people self-identified themselves as working in different aspects of the support industry, more outsourcers for one thing. And so we can't compare apples to apples with past years on the channels, But what we do see is an astounding change between this year and last year in terms of channels. It doesn't necessarily mean that the same organizations have changed. They might have changed somewhat, but probably not this radically. Phone has dropped. Last year it was something like 55%. So now this year it's 47%. On the left side, what I've done is I've taken those numbers and ranked them just highest to lowest. And then on the right side, just to present you a picture of how almost even the spread is among these different channels, and there's some real surprises here. Let's take a look at mobile apps. 26% of the folks that responded to our research here said that they're taking tickets, basically, through mobile apps. A quarter are doing auto-logging. 22% of the tickets came through web forms, and social media is up to 17% now. That's a tremendous increase, but again, the demographics are a little bit different. So there's a lot of different channels. We did add text this year, which we did not have last year, and we see 17%. But here's the big surprise. The big surprise to me is that fax is still showing at something like 18% of the tickets. And that's amazing to me, but it points up something that Mark Fitzgerald, who's a member of our desktop support group, he works at the Boise State University, and he said very, very perceptively that the old tools don't go away. They're augmented by the new tools. So fax is going to stay there until fax is no longer supportable at all, and people will stop using it, I guess. I can't imagine using a fax for support, but there it is. So it's a very interesting mix. And yes, this does not add up to 100%, folks, because they were allowed to choose more than one. We asked them to list all the channels by which they take. I just saw that go by. Thank you very much for saying I give more than 100% every day. But this does not add up to 100%. It's way bigger than 100% because we might say that in my organization, 47% of the tickets come in through phone chat, and 50% come in some other way, and other organizations have a different split. So they were allowed to select more than one thing. Okay, so here's my favorite, I think, change that's happening, and it's starting to peek its head up. A couple of years ago, I was asked to contribute to about a 20 or 25-page set of papers by different people in the industry talking about what the service desk would look like in 2017. And I thought that it would look pretty much like this, where a service desk is more like a brokerage. Because organizations are obtaining their services from so many different sources. There's managed service providers, there are cloud providers, there are internal resources, there are all of these different ways in which an organization can get technical resources. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, isn't that a great role for the service desk to be the keeper of the keys, to understand where to go to get support for people? So people use their own smartphone. They might have an iPhone that's either AT&T or Sprint or Verizon or T-Mobile, wherever. So we've got to have a connection to T-Mobile or Verizon if something goes wrong with that phone. Is it company-owned? Is it personally owned? What applications have to be on it? We have to know all that stuff, and then we need to know what that person has to do in the case of a broken phone. How do we deal with that? Who's responsible? And so the role of knowledge becomes increasingly important. We have to know who our cloud providers are for different applications and different storage. We have to know which providers are doing what, which managed service providers are doing what. So we're kind of in the middle of a world of different provision for IT, and we've got to be the smart folks and know where we need to go to get help for our customers. Very important. Then something that's emerged, and I'm sure you've either been talking about this or have heard about other organizations that are doing it, the Concierge Support or Genius Bar, whatever you want to call it. There are a couple of different kinds. One is, available to limited people within the organization, just maybe the VIPs or the traveling sales folks or whoever it happens to be that get to have this service, or maybe it's open to everybody. And then there's a further split between the scheduled kind and the unscheduled kind. And scheduling obviously introduces a little bit more sanity on the part of the service desk, because if you just have people sitting there waiting for somebody to walk in, maybe they're working on other tasks. One would hope that they have other things to do. That's maybe not the most efficient use of their time. Maybe it is the most efficient use of their time when somebody walks in and they're able to immediately provide service. Having scheduled appointments is a way that a lot of different organizations have gone, and that is probably the best from the service desk point of view, with desktop support's point of view, to be able to schedule people effectively and have them ready with the right skills when somebody comes in the door, although it might not be as convenient for the customer, who might want to just be able to walk in and have an issue addressed right then and there. So these are questions your organization has to think about and ask itself and see if this would be an effective way for you to go. And this is an example of walk-in by appointment from University of California, San Diego. And that's just, you can look at this when you download the slide deck. You can take a close look at that, but that's how that works. And as you'll notice, underneath the request appointment button, it says, notice it's one button. Go back to that Apple and Google graphic, right? For general questions, please send email to desktop@uscdsu. We'll respond within 24 hours. And why does it say we respond within 24 hours? Because it's setting expectations at a certain level. And if you look above the request appointment button, it will explain more about how to set the customer expectations. Let people know how long it's going to take to get their issue addressed right off the bat. Okay? It's very important. So here's what's going on. Business is undergoing rapid change. No shock there. You look at mergers, acquisitions, lawsuits, changes, business failures, all of the things that are going on in the business world, and it's more rapid than ever, and businesses are trying to very quickly reinvent themselves, take advantage of new technologies, and they're trying to get ahead. They're trying to expand. So support is changing to keep up with that, and both evolving and reinventing. Remember that evolving is incremental change. Reinventing is more disruptive change. It's more that reinvention. Well, reinventing would be reinvention, wouldn't it, right? Thank you very much for saying that. How clever of me. But you get the idea. Metamorphosis is on my mind because my spouse is raising butterflies right now. So it's kind of that, caterpillar to butterfly transformation that a lot of businesses are trying to go through. And it is not easy, and sometimes the eggs get broken to make the omelet, Technology can be extraordinarily helpful. Some of the technologies that Jeff talked about during the BMC portion of the program for communication among people, especially think about those distributed or embedded people out there, being able to collaborate, being in touch with what's going on in the support center. Communication is exceedingly important. Tracking the issues that we have going on. Again, those distributed folks not using the same ticket system, maybe not so good. And measuring, being able to capture all of this, measure the right things with the right metrics, which is getting increasingly tricky, and you might want to take advantage of a couple of the papers that are in the HDI resources folder. And central to it all, as I mentioned during that section that I talked about, the brokerage, is knowledge. Knowledge underlays everything. In order to take to be able to deliver support the right way, whether it's distributed, embedded, whether you're pushing things out to self-service, knowledge underlays it all. And if you don't know much about knowledge management, now is a really good time to learn. And then being able to measure success. And remember that you need to measure from the customer's perspective. Try to look at your metrics and see what you're measuring from the customer perspective and what is relevant only to you. And that brings it to the end of my presentation, and I would love to be able to take some questions from you, and I'm sure that Jeff would too. And okay, we have a question from John who says, can you explain the channels of support slide in more detail? Seems like it would be easier to understand if it all added up to 100%. Now, that's simply because people were allowed to select as many channels as apply to them. And that's just the percentage of their tickets that come in through that particular channel. So that's it is more than 100%. It'll probably be a little bit clearer when you see it in the final report as opposed to my little two-second pie chart there. But it doesn't add up to 100%. Often research things don't add up to 100% because people can select all that apply. Okay? Can you get a copy of the slides? Yes, they will be available to you for download. Can the presentation be downloaded? Well, you can get the slides, but you cannot download the presentation. You can't actually see the video and audio. Let's see what else we have going on here. How does mobility play a part in this evolving support model? And Jeff, I know that you talked about mobility during your portion. Maybe you'd like to take a piece of that, and we can talk about that together a little bit.
Yeah, and we see mobility on both sides of the service desk, and there's a couple of chats I came across like this as well. And the both sides would be what our users, or excuse me, what our customers are using, meaning giving them the ability to find their own information, submit requests, do instance, do context aware, and you had that concierge services slide there. That was great. And so giving them the ability to do concierge type services like book an appointment for the service desk. So that's one side of mobility. Giving the business users a friendly format application that works on a mobile device is really where we see the major focus. But also we see more and more mobility from the service desk side. And it's not necessarily just taking a field technician kind of perspective, like what we've always done, being able to take your requests and your issues with you as you're going to the basement to fix something or whatnot. We see it more of a, how can I also process the requests and incidents, even from an L1 kind of perspective from mobility, which traditionally you wouldn't have seen. We see more and more of those requests down from the service desk side as well, so it sort of works both angles.
Cool. Thanks very much, Jeff. We have this is a great question. Ramchand asks, capturing tickets through mobile apps sounds great. How about making the knowledge base available over mobile apps? Is anyone doing that? And Jeff, maybe you can answer that from a BMC perspective. I know that it made a huge difference for my team when we started being able to use a mobile interface for a ticketing system. It was just a tremendous difference because people could create tickets on the fly when they got, lapelled in the hallway, or were able to add or resolve tickets right on the fly in desktop support from no matter where they were. Does BMC have something that pushes knowledge into the mobile app?
Yes. The number one thing to deflect calls is knowledge, and we spend a lot of time on knowledge. And we call it a super box. So I can type in emails producing error X, Y, and Z, right? And from there, what we can do is we present to them all the knowledge articles that have to do with that particular error. And then if you type it in, is also, causing Google to crash. And then we'll present all the articles based upon that, the string of words. So we have an algorithm behind it to produce knowledge from that mobile device, very friendly, very easy to see. And then what we do is if the user deems that that's not knowledge, isn't going to solve the issue, from the same box, we just have a little, think of it as like a hashtag. You just put a hashtag around it, and then they click submit, and then that request goes into the service desk. So we intertwine sort of knowledge viewing and the ability to request an issue or submit an issue within one sort of super box area.
Cool. Thank you. James asked, do I have any preliminary data from the 2014 Support Center for top factors influencing Support Center spending? James, I don't. That all the data is under analysis right now. I was just able to pull out a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today, but I do not have that as my fingertips. And specifically, you're looking for whether Expand Services has come up from the bottom. Depending on how that's defined, I suspect that it will, as I said, we've had a separate research project underway to talk about expanding the purview of support, so very interesting. Specifically, Al wants to know, can dashboards be represented on MyIT? Jeff, can you answer that one?
We do have a series of, right now, not in the sense that you're thinking about dashboards like you would have it at a desktop environment, but yeah, we're working on presenting those analysis through, it's not necessarily going to be MyIT because it's more of a business user point of view, but from an IT help desk point of view, yeah, we have some technologies coming out here within 2 months that are going to have dashboards and analysis for the service desk, not so much for the business users, but for the service desk.
All right, thank you. Peter's asking, with today's technologies, what is a realistic ratio of technician to user/device? Peter, that's all over the ballpark, and it really depends on the size of the organization as much as anything else. We do have, if you go to thinkhdi.com/DS, like desktop support, you will find a link there to an infographic about desktop technician in a nutshell, and you can see the variation in the ratios of end users to technicians widely. I mean, it's huge. It's like 67 to 1 at the very small organizations and 1,000 to 1 in the big organizations. That's one factor that determines it. The other thing is the type of technology, how complex is the environment. There's all kinds of different things that weigh on how many staff people you have as opposed to how many end users you have. It's always tricky, but I would definitely check out some of our research, especially that one, desktop support technician in a nutshell. Again, that's thinkhdi.com/DS. You can get some desktop support info there, and I'll tell you how many techs, depending on size. The slides will be downloadable after the presentation. There is, and Patty, in the resources section, if you click on resources in the top nav bar, you will find a folder which has HDI resources in it. And also there's a BMC folder which has some assets that BMC has kindly provided today. So make sure you make sure you download some of those. Lots of requests for the presentation. Yes, it will be downloadable after and that, by that I mean the slides will be available to you afterwards in a PDF form. But the actual presentation will be live here in the theater. You can come back and view it on demand using the same login for several weeks, and then after that it will move over to our HDI webcast archives on thinkhdi.com. So before we run out of time, I just want to mention what's coming up next month. On September 16th, we'll be having an HDI Buyer's Guide live, and that's called Expanding the Influence of Service and Support Management. And we'll have Easy Vista, Semmanage, and Sharewell Software taking part in that Buyer's Guide live. So mark your calendars for September 16th, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And we look forward to seeing you then. Again, big thanks to Jeff Maloney from BMC for being part of this today. Really enjoyed your presentation, Jeff. And thank you so much to BMC for sponsoring. And I'll just get in another little mention of Engage, which is their user conference. They've started down in Orlando this year, October 15th. And then perhaps you could go to Orlando and then come to D.C. for HDI and ICSMF's Fusion Conference. So making it an extended learning experience for you. It's terrific to have you with us. And we will see you next time here in the HDI Webcast Theater. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everybody.